This is Michael Popok. It's After Dark. Do you know where your legal AF is? Speaking of AF, what is happening in Georgia? We turn our back on it for a moment, and I'm talking about the legal and law landscape for Donald Trump, not the electoral issues. We'll talk about that another time. But on the law front, what is happening with Fani Willis? And how are the Senate Republicans in Georgia going after Fani, and why isn't the court system protecting her? And what's happening to the indictment and an indictment that was supposed to be brought against other fake electors? Is this case ever going to go to trial? We break it all down for you. We answer latest developments about what's going on in Georgia. One place, Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen. Georgia's relatively straightforward. Fani Willis is up to her neck in alligators, and particularly Republican alligators, who have been going after her mercilessly, and Trumper lawyers. Speaking of lawyers that should listen to the new campaign about losing your bar license, Ashley Merchant is going after Fani Willis. There's two different events that I'm going to cover here quickly. One, Ashley Merchant, who doesn't want to let anything lie. There's already an issue on appeal about whether Fani Willis's relationship with the person that used to work in her office somehow implicated her prosecutorial discretion, which makes absolutely no sense. But yet the Georgia appellate court seemed very interested in this. And the issue of whether Fani Willis should have been removed from the indictment, and therefore the indictment, I guess, dismissed, is up at the second level, not the highest level, the intermediary level appellate court with Georgia. There's going to be some hearings later in September and October that we'll report on. In the meantime, Ashley Merchant's driving Fani Willis, the Fulton County DA's office, crazy and up the wall with public records requests, asking for documents about the investigation, Fani Willis and her relationship with the guy and all this other stuff. And there was a hearing, and it got a little snippy. Fani wasn't there. It got a little snippy. And at the end, the judge was like, there should be, I'm concerned the documents weren't produced fast enough, but I'm not going to find anybody in contempt. So just give him all the documents and we'll come back another day if there's an issue. So that was that one hearing. Then at the very same time, Fani Willis has been trying to fight off subpoenas by the Republican Georgia Senate and their investigation committee that's been up her backside to investigate her as payback, MAGA payback for her investigating and prosecuting Donald Trump. Let me remind our audience, for those that are new here and are new to the Legal AF channel, at Legal AF MTN, that Fani Willis didn't get up one morning and go, it's a great idea as a Democrat. I'm going to indict Donald Trump. And then, get on her typewriter, and create an indictment. That's not how that worked. She knew the magnitude of what she was contemplating based on the evidence that had been presented to her. And she impaneled and got permission to do it, a special purpose grand jury whose only role was to guide her as to whether there should be an indictment. So 25 Georgians got together over weeks and weeks and weeks and heard evidence and testimony. And after listening to all of it, they said, yeah, you should. In fact, you should indict more people than the ones you're recommending. Here's the list, and it was like this, adding machine tape of people that should be indicted in Georgia. And she said, "All right, well, let me impanel a real grand jury that actually indicts, and I'll present evidence I'll make my decision about which of the ones that were recommended, because at the end of the day, I'm the prosecutor." And she had her 18 or 19 people, the fake electors, all the little lawyers around Donald Trump, many of which who have lost their bar license on that theme, Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, Mike Roman, and the list goes on. And that's the case. So we have the appeal. Republicans in the Georgia Senate want to bring Fani Willis before them, much the way that Jim Jordan tried to bring her and the Manhattan DA in front of them, because they think they have some role in the separation of powers in telling a prosecutor what to do or to ask the prosecutor questions during ongoing prosecution that's not yet concluded. And so Fani ran, rightly so, and she filed a motion in court to quash the subpoenas, an emergency motion. And here's I think people love this show because we give them the nitty gritty of the procedure. The emergency motion to quash the subpoena was denied because there's no longer an emergency, because the Republicans in the Senate in Georgia have decided that they need to now enforce the subpoena because she didn't show up. And so now after they enforce the subpoena and after they get to a contempt proceeding, then it looks like the judge is going to intervene and do something. But in the meantime, the judge was like, yeah, no, it's not an emergency, so I'm going to deny your relief. It just shows you that we got an uphill battle in Georgia. We have a chance as Democrats and for Kamala Harris to win Georgia and North Carolina. But let me remind everybody, because I know a lot of people, even the woman that your neighbor who lives over your back fence, they always ask us, okay, you're telling us how to ski the course. I mean, you tell us where the flags is, but how do you ski the course? Like, what do we do next? How do we help? You got plenty of time to help. There's voter registration going on in the battleground states. The ones that we have to focus on, especially North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. She has to win two of three of those in order to get the White House. There's no other way around it. And Pennsylvania first among them. So in places like Georgia's only gone Democratic twice. Jimmy Carter, who was the governor of the state, and Joe Biden in the history of Georgia, okay, in the last 75 years. North Carolina's only gone blue once. It wasn't even Biden. It was Barack Obama. And she's got to win. So places like Georgia are really important, but they're headed by Republican institutions. We got a new ruling. I'll leave Georgia on this. We got a new ruling in Georgia by the Georgia Election Board, the state election board, which is dominated 3-2 majority by Trumpers and MAGA, so Trumpers and so MAGA that when Donald Trump was in Georgia last month, he shouted them out by name. They have just passed a rule. Listen to this, Ben. They have just passed a rule that I'm sure will be challenged in court by the Democrats and the Democratic lawyers in Kamala Harris's campaign, forcing the entire state to conduct a hand count of each and every ballot cast, millions and millions of ballots casted from the night, starting on the night of the election, despite the fact that there's a state rule that all the election has to be certified by the Monday after the Tuesday of the election. It is going to be physically impossible. They're never going to have the resources, the amount of people that are required. And even if they did to try to hand count everything, that will inject fraud and error into the hand count, as opposed to the optical reader count and everything else. Every election official and every clerk's office in Georgia told them not to do this. So for some people out there that think, well, I've heard about hand counts. Yes, we have a system in this country of what to do if you're on the losing side of a case of an election and you think there's been fraud. It's called a contest. You file a lawsuit as the loser, Trump, for instance, in court. And maybe they'll be ordered a hand count or some other way to determine if there is a small enough gap margin. Like there has to be all these places have statutes. These states have statutes that tell you like how close an election has to be before you're even entitled to a contest or a recount or a hand count, but not the night of the election. So we're not going to hear from Georgia, which will give them all that time. The Georgia MAGA, all that time, led by Burt Jones, who just got off the hook by another prosecutor. This is what happens if Fani Willis gets removed. Burt Jones was a fake elector. Burt Jones is a lieutenant governor for the state. There are new emails and texts that have just come out about Burt Jones, in which it shows that he was in it up to his neck with MAGA and Donald Trump to try to help him win the 2020 election in Georgia. Despite that, a prosecutor not named Fani Willis, who was an independent prosecutor appointed by the court for other reasons, he decided, no, I don't see anything here. I'm not indicting after 2 years. I'm not indicting Burt Jones, but he's still, one of the heads of the government there and proudly supporting the state election board. What we got to do is we got to go into states like Georgia, work and make sure that the churches and people are registered and people are voting, because this is going to be hand-to-hand combat. That just gave them, this new rule gave them 6 more days to file lawsuits and to not certify the election. We're not going to know the night of the election. No network is now going to be able to call Georgia while they're doing this quote-unquote hand count unless they can get an emergency lawsuit filed and they can win it in time before the election. So that's what's going on in Georgia. Welcome back. We do that podcast Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Only one place on YouTube land, YouTube Landia. It's called the MeidasTouch Network. Free subscribe if you haven't already. Help them get to 3 million 3.5 million. Sorry, free subscribers. We're trying to do that before the election. It's possible. And then in addition, I got great news. If you like what you just saw there, we got the full 1 hour length podcast Wednesdays and Saturdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time here on the MeidasTouch Network. But then we got a brand new channel in collaboration with, running alongside and parallel to our brothers, literally, at MeidasTouch. It's called Legal AF MTN. It's a brand new channel. It's so new that you can help us get to 100,000 free subscribers before Halloween. That's our goal right now. I will be curating that channel. Michael Popok, sitting at the intersection of law and politics, where I like to reside, and bringing you the best stories there without blowing smoke or sunshine. Find out what 40 million people a month already know, that Legal AF is the home of law and politics commentary and analysis like no other in all of YouTube. I defy you to find a group of lawyers who know what they're doing at that intersection more than our group of lawyers and me. Go ahead, I got time. In the meantime, free subscribe. Go over to our new channel, Legal AF MTN, and help us get to 100,000. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF podcast on the MeidasTouch Network, until my next original exclusive content for Legal AF MTN on YouTube. This is Michael Popok reporting. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.